Director Martin Campbell introduced Pierce Brosnan as James Bond in GoldenEye, reviving a franchise that had been dormant for 6 years following legal battles and the Cold War's end. These are 20 hidden details you completely missed in GoldenEye. Number 20. After License to Kill in 1989, Bond went on hiatus due to legal disputes between MGM/UA and EON Productions over distribution rights. Danjaq Holding Company sued MGM over violations of Bond distribution agreements made with United Artists in 1962. The battles weren't resolved until December 1992, with producer Albert R. Broccoli fighting to maintain creative control throughout the lengthy proceedings. Additionally, screenwriter Kevin McClory threatened competing Bond films based on Thunderball rights he'd acquired in previous lawsuits. By 1993, Eon could finally push ahead with pre-production on a new Bond film. The prolonged delay meant the entire landscape of global politics had shifted by the time cameras rolled. The modernized MI6 setting reflects the 1990s shift in espionage filmmaking after 6 years away from theaters. Number 19. The Soviet Union dissolved in 1991, forcing GoldenEye to directly address the end of the Cold War through dialogue and plot structure. The villain is former MI6 agent Alec Trevelyan, played by Sean Bean, rather than a Soviet operative, reflecting the new geopolitical reality. Producer Michael G. Wilson wanted to frame the film in the post-Cold War era when concerns about weapons proliferation dominated international discourse. Judi Dench's M calls Bond a relic of the Cold War, explicitly acknowledging the franchise's need to modernize. The film explores what happens to Cold War spies when enemies become allies, making betrayal more relevant than nation-state conflicts. The shift from ideological warfare to personal vengeance marked a turning point for the entire series. This thematic shift distinguished GoldenEye from every previous Bond film. Number 18. Actor. Pierce Brosnan was initially offered Bond in 1986 after Roger Moore retired, but had to decline due to contractual obligations to Remington Steele. Albert R. Broccoli had been watching Remington Steele and said, "If Brosnan can act, he's my guy to inherit the role." When the show was canceled in 1986, Broccoli offered Brosnan the part for The Living Daylights, and he'd even done publicity photos. However, NBC reversed the cancellation just as Brosnan was about to sign the Bond contract. The role went to Timothy Dalton instead. Brosnan waited nearly a decade before finally taking the role in 1994 when Martin Campbell selected him. The delay ultimately worked in his favor, as he brought a maturity to the role that wouldn't have been possible in 1986. Number 17. Actress Judi Dench became the first female M in the franchise, replacing Robert Brown in a casting decision that reflected modern workplace shifts and intelligence reforms. Her appointment signaled the producer's intention to modernize Bond's world beyond just recasting the lead actor. Dench's confrontation scene with Bond establishes a new authority dynamic, with M directly challenging his methods rather than offering paternal guidance. The scene where she calls him a sexist, misogynist dinosaur became one of the film's most quoted moments. Martin Campbell and Barbara Broccoli wanted someone who could credibly command respect and intimidate Brosnan's Bond through presence alone. Her performance was so compelling that she remained in the role longer than any actor who played Bond opposite her. Dench continued in the role through 4 Brosnan films. Number 16. Sean Bean plays Alec Trevelyan, Agent 006 and Bond's friend presumed dead during the pre-credits mission at Arkhangelsk 9 years earlier. The concept of a rogue British agent modernized the villain archetype, making the threat personal and psychological. Trevelyan's backstory references the Layens Cossacks and post-World War II repatriation events, grounding his revenge in historical grievance against the British government. The graveyard confrontation in Russia underscores the betrayal, with Bean delivering a monologue explaining how he faked his death. Bean's casting brought credibility through his dramatic range demonstrated in Patriot Games, making Trevelyan a formidable adversary who matched Bond's skills perfectly. The 006 designation emphasized that Trevelyan was Bond's equal in training, skill, and ruthlessness. Number 15. The name comes from author Ian Fleming's Jamaican estate called GoldenEye, where he wrote all the original Bond novels between 1952 and 1964. Fleming also named a World War II intelligence Operation GoldenEye, his contingency plan for maintaining contact with Gibraltar in case Germany invaded Spain. The film honors Bond's literary roots while modernizing the narrative using the name for a satellite weapon. Designer Daniel Kleinman created opening titles that blended traditional Bond imagery with computer graphics, replacing longtime designer Morris Binder, who had passed away in 1991. The title's dual historical significance gave the film a deeper connection to Fleming's legacy than most Bond titles. The combination paid tribute to Bond's past while signaling its future direction. Number 14. The Dam Jump was performed by stuntman Wayne Michaels at the Verzaska Dam in Switzerland, dropping 220 meters in one of the highest bungee jumps ever performed for a film. Michaels reached speeds of 100 miles per hour and came perilously close to the concrete surface studded with iron struts. The stunt was orchestrated by stunt coordinator Simon Crane and the Oxford Stunt Factory, requiring 2 weeks of preparation. Martin Campbell wanted an opening that established the film's high-stakes tone and showed audiences something they'd never seen before. The vertical drop shot was achieved without visible CGI, capturing Michaels in a single take with 6 strategically positioned cameras. The stunt became so iconic that it inspired a commercial bungee jumping operation at the same location. Number 13. Bond's iconic Aston Martin DB5 returned for the first time since Thunderball in 1965, appearing 30 years after its famous appearance in Goldfinger. The car symbolized continuity with the Sean Connery era, reassuring fans that the new Bond respected franchise tradition. The mountain road race pitting the DB5 against Xenia Onatopp's Ferrari F355 became one of the film's memorable sequences. Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson wanted familiar elements to ground Pierce Brosnan's debut, balancing innovation with nostalgia. Peter Lamont ensured the DB5 appeared pristine and faithful to original specifications rather than modernized with contemporary modifications that would have felt anachronistic. The choice to feature the DB5 without gadgets emphasized elegance over gimmickry. Number 12. The St. Petersburg tank chase used a real T-55 tank from the East England Military Museum, modified with fake armor panels for stunts. Special effects supervisor Chris Corbold's team purchased 3 tanks, costing between £9,000 to £11,000 each for the production. Much of the destruction was practical, with the 42-ton tank genuinely smashing through buildings, statues, and vehicles during 6 weeks of filming. The sequence took place partly in St. Petersburg and partly at Leavesden Studios, where Peter Lamont recreated Russian streets. Director Ian Sharp led the second unit through complex choreography, with the tank smashing through a statue of Tsar Nicholas on a winged stallion. The production team had to coordinate closely with Russian authorities to film the on-location portions without disrupting daily life. Number 11. Actress Famke Janssen's character Xenia Onatopp blends sexuality and brutality in a performance designed to embody post-Cold War chaos. The character was conceived as a former Soviet fighter pilot who becomes a ruthless assassin for the Janus crime syndicate. The lethal thigh crush scenes where Xenia hurts victims during encounters became infamous, pushing PG-13 rating boundaries. Janssen and Brosnan filmed an intense bathhouse fight using specially padded sets for safe choreography. Martin Campbell wanted a villain who matched Bond's intensity while serving as a threat, inverting the typical Bond girl dynamic where women were allies or victims. Her obvious pleasure in violence made her one of the franchise's most disturbing antagonists. Janssen's commitment made Onatopp memorable. Number 10. Composer John Barry, who defined the Bond sound across 11 films starting with From Russia with Love, did not score GoldenEye. French composer Eric Serra was hired instead due to his Virgin Records contract. Serra composed heavily synthesized tracks that marked a dramatic departure from Barry's orchestral approach, creating a divisive score. Director Martin Campbell later expressed disappointment, citing difficulty working with Serra, who became uncooperative when asked to rescore the tank chase. John Altman ultimately provided replacement music for that sequence, incorporating a traditional Bond theme arrangement. The electronic shifts felt appropriate for some, but alienated traditionalists expecting Barry's brass-heavy sound. Serra never worked on another Bond film following the mixed reception. Number 9. Much of the production was filmed at Leavesden Studios in Hertfordshire, England, which later became home to the Harry Potter franchise starting in 2000. Eon Productions was unable to film at Pinewood Studios because it had been reserved for First Night starring Sean Connery. With little time to find adequate space, Eon found an old Rolls-Royce aircraft engine factory at Leavesden Aerodrome with wide hangars suited for conversion. The company leased the site, gutted the factory, and turned it into stages and workshops. Large-scale sets, including the satellite control room, were built at Leavesden, along with recreated St. Petersburg streets for the tank chase, shot by second unit director Ian Sharp. The temporary facility proved so successful that it became a permanent studio complex. Number 8. The screenplay was initially written by Michael France, hired in May 1993, who researched by traveling to Russia to interview former KGB agents. Screenwriter Jeffrey Kane later revised France's draft with additional work by Kevin Wade and Bruce Fairstein to update political context. France's first draft was completed around January 1994, though development began months earlier with Barbara Broccoli providing guidance. The rewrites reflected changing geopolitics, transforming what might have been a traditional Cold War narrative into something addressing contemporary concerns about nuclear proliferation. Updated dialogue references Russia's economic collapse and NATO's uncertain role, grounding the satellite weapon plot in recognizable 1990s anxieties about the former Soviet Union's nuclear arsenal. The collaborative process ensured the film felt contemporary rather than dated upon release. Number 7. GoldenEye grossed over $356.4 million worldwide against a production budget of approximately $60 million, becoming the highest-grossing Bond film at the time. The film opened on November 17, 1995, to strong reviews as a successful return to form. The success secured Pierce Brosnan's multi-film tenure, with the actor starring in 4 Bond movies between 1995 and 2002. Global marketing emphasized Brosnan's combination of charm and danger, positioning him as a worthy successor. Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson's leadership proved effective, demonstrating they could carry the franchise forward after Albert R. Broccoli's declining health forced him into a consulting role during production. The box office numbers exceeded studio expectations and silenced critics who doubted Bond's relevance. Number 6. GoldenEye 007 for Nintendo 64, released in August 1997, became one of the most influential first-person shooters ever made. The game was developed by British studio Rare and featured innovative split-screen multiplayer that became a defining gaming experience for a generation. The facility level mirrored the film's opening location at Arkhangelsk, while other missions adapted key sequences, including the tank chase and satellite dish finale. The game sold over 8 million copies worldwide and won numerous Game of the Year awards. Its success demonstrated that movie-licensed games could achieve acclaim when given proper development time rather than being rushed cash-ins timed to theatrical releases. Many players discovered Bond through the game rather than the films. Number 5. Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson aimed to blend Sean Connery's dangerous toughness with Roger Moore's charm, creating a hybrid approach that Pierce Brosnan's performance reflects throughout. Martin Campbell wanted Bond believable in both casino scenes and brutal fight. Choreography, avoiding excessive camp of late-period Moore films. Brosnan studied previous actors extensively, telling interviewers he leaned towards Connery's style but couldn't deny Moore's influence. The rebalancing extended to production design, with Peter Lamont creating sets that felt grounded yet fantastical. Screenwriters calibrated dialogue to give Bond vulnerability without undermining his competence, particularly in scenes with Judi Dench's M challenging his methods. The approach established a template that influenced how future actors would interpret the character. Number 4. Alec Trevelyan's backstory references the Lians Cossacks, anti-communist Russians who fought alongside Nazi Germany during World War II and were forcibly repatriated to the Soviet Union by British forces after 1945. Trevelyan reveals his parents were Lians Cossacks who survived Stalin's mass executions but lived long enough to have a son before his father killed his mother and committed suicide. This historical grievance grounds the revenge plot in actual post-war events that remain controversial. Sean Bean's monologue connects personal tragedy to state-level decisions, arguing Bond serves a government guilty of profound moral failures. Martin Campbell and Jeffrey Kane wanted a villain whose motivations audiences could understand despite extreme methods. The historical detail gave the film intellectual weight unusual for action blockbusters. Number 3. The dynamic between Bond and computer programmer Natalya Simonova, played by Isabella Scorupco, reflects 1990s attitudes toward gender equality, with Natalya portrayed as capable and assertive. Natalya is the Severnaya satellite station's sole survivor due to her technical expertise and quick thinking during the weapons test firing. The control room hacking scenes show her as Bond's intellectual equal, with her programming skills essential to stopping Trevelyan's plan. She challenges Bond's methods and calls him out for his cavalier attitude toward death and violence. Martin Campbell and screenwriters wanted to avoid the helpless Bond girl stereotype that had become increasingly dated, though they included Famke Janssen's Xenia Onatopp for contrast. Scorupco insisted on performing many of her own stunts to emphasize Natalya's competence. Number 2. The film introduced more realistic action choreography compared to 1970s entries, with gritty hand-to-hand combat emphasizing physical consequences rather than bloodless brawls. Martin Campbell came from television and brought a grounded aesthetic that balanced fantastical elements with believable stakes, learning from Timothy Dalton's harder-edged approach. GoldenEye balanced Cold War nostalgia through Alec Trevelyan with modern espionage themes including cyber warfare and satellite weapons. The film acknowledged Bond needed updating without abandoning traditions, keeping the Aston Martin DB5 and vodka martinis while adding self-aware dialogue. Cinematographer Phil Maher shot action sequences with kinetic energy that felt contemporary, alongside True Lies and Die Hard with a vengeance, avoiding static camera setups. The modernization proved you could respect Bond's history while pushing the franchise forward. Number 1. Without GoldenEye's critical and commercial success, grossing $356.4 million worldwide, MGM's financial instability combined with 6 years away might have ended Bond's theatrical run permanently. The stakes were enormous, with industry observers questioning whether audiences still cared about a Cold War relic in a post-Soviet world dominated by CGI spectacles like Jurassic Park. The film re-established 007 as a global blockbuster force in the 1990s, proving the character could evolve across generations and geopolitical eras. Albert R. Broccoli, in declining health, entrusted the franchise to his daughter Barbara Broccoli and stepson Michael G. Wilson, who justified his faith by delivering a film honoring him tradition while embracing change. The film's success guaranteed Bond would continue for decades rather than becoming a nostalgic footnote. GoldenEye resurrected 007 for a post-Cold War world, launching Pierce Brosnan's tenure and redefining spy cinema for the 1990s. From legal battles to record-breaking stunts, every element contributed to saving the franchise and ensuring its survival into the 21st century. Which hidden detail surprised you most, and what film should we open next?